we'll start with this. Ahead of what is to be her long-anticipated, long-awaited showdown with domestic rival and champion Alicia Baumgardner, unified super featherweight champion Mikaela Mayer says, I am definitely going to take it to her. I have every intention of stopping her. She was quoted as saying, what changed?
What led to the Baumgardner fight happening sooner than later?
She was quoted as saying what changed was that Baumgardner and Eddie had the same problem with Choi as I did trying to get a fight with her. I don't know what their situation was, but when we tried to fight Choi, her team demanded all kinds of insane stuff to the point where they wanted Top Rank to promote her for a few fights after that. I assume they had the same problems. The super featherweight division is the hottest division in our sport right now, and Choi is holding us all up. She won't fight anyone top tier. She's barely fighting. It's really frustrating. I think that they couldn't get a fight with Choi also, and Top Rank stepped up and made her an offer.
There is some truth to what Mikaela's saying. Yumi Choi hasn't fought all this year.
She has been fighting once a year for the last 4 years. You heard that right. She's been fighting once a year for the last 4 years. She was last in action in September of last year against journeywoman level opponent Simone De Silva, who has losses in the double digits.
That's the only fight she had last year.
Mikaela was quoted as saying, Top Rank came forward with an offer. I can remember being in London for the Tyson Fury fight, and we were talking about the next fight and kind of dismissing the Baumgardner fight because we thought she was fighting Choi. And then I was told to stay skinny. We'll be in touch soon. There have been suggestions, not so subtle hints, that Baumgardner will be going into the big unification fight with the greater financial reward, something which Mayer said just isn't the case. She was quoted as saying, that's absolutely not true. There is no way she is getting paid more than me.
Well, why is that so far-fetched?
The people at Top Rank must have offered Alicia Baumgardner something substantial to get her to cross over from the matchroom side of things over to Top Rank.
I'm pretty sure she's not crossing over because they offered her peanuts.
Mikaela said, that's absolutely not true. There is no way she is getting paid more than me. She is probably getting the biggest payday of her life, but there is no way she's getting paid more than I am. She's probably getting what I got in my last fight. Eddie Hearn has said he believes Baumgardner will repeat her performance with Terry Harper and stop Mayer when they meet later on this year. If she could knock out Edith Soledad Matisse, then she is definitely not knocking me out. It's clear she does have some power, but she has never gone up against anybody like me. I'm by far her biggest test. People will say that she beat Terry Harper, but she was never that experienced anyway. If Baumgardner thinks she will come in and just land a lucky punch, it's not happening. If she doesn't do it quickly in the first 2 or 3 rounds, then she is done for. The skills and versatility I have to outbox her, she doesn't have that. Alicia is very one-dimensional. You can see that in her last fight with Matisse.
That's harsh.
There was no second gear. She was just coasting, just trying to land that one big shot. Once I catch on to her rhythm, there is nothing she can do to adapt to me. I have had to adapt. Top Rank has built me and given me fights where I have to challenge myself and adapt to different styles. I don't know if she's ready for this fight, but I am.
Mikaela's not a knockout puncher.
Maybe she's got a tenuous point. A tenuous point that, if Alicia couldn't stop Edith, how's she going to stop Mikaela? Well, nobody's ever stopped Edith Matisse. She's literally never been stopped.
So if that's the way you're going to play it.
Mikaela Mayer couldn't stop Erica Farias or Jennifer Hahn. Both of those fighters were coming off back-to-back losses.
Erica had lost 2 fights to Jessica McCaskill, and she was coming off a lengthy stint of inactivity.
And she was coming down in weight from 140 to 130 pounds. Mikaela couldn't stop her. She couldn't stop Jennifer Hahn, who was coming right off that loss to Katie Taylor.
Nothing against those broads, but both those broads are pushing 40.
You're throwing stones in a glass house, Mikaela. Mikaela, who says, honestly, I think I will break her down, and I don't put it past that I will stop her. If she doesn't respect my power, I do have power. Ask my previous opponents. They know I have power. They have been hit by me, and they have felt my pressure. If she doesn't respect my power, then she will get stopped. I will overwhelm her with punches, and I have seen how she handles pressure. She doesn't know how to handle pressure. She falls all over the place. She doesn't know how to hold herself on the inside. And once I catch on to her, I am definitely going to take it to her. I have every intention of stopping her.
We'll see.
Listen, I think Mikaela Mayer's a quality operator. I think she's a skilled fighter. I really do, but if you couldn't stop Erica Farias coming off a loss, or Jennifer Hahn coming off a loss, Helen Joseph coming off a loss...
You couldn't stop them, but you're gonna stop Alicia, who's never been stopped.
And, unlike those fighters, is in her physical prime. She's a younger fighter than Mikaela Mayer, And to the eye, she's definitely a harder puncher. She's in her prime years, riding high, coming off of consecutive victories as opposed to consecutive losses, like those fighters.
You know, Michaela was really laying into Jennifer Hahn.
She landed some hard shots, and Jennifer Hahn was a bloody mess. Her face was, but she didn't get stopped. You couldn't stop Jennifer, but you're gonna stop Alicia.
Alicia, who's more athletic and faster than Jennifer Hahn.
More defensively sound with faster hands and faster feet in her physical prime, and she's a harder puncher than you are.
Yeah, that's a tough sell.
Michaela Mayer's best bet to win this fight is on points. On points, not by way of knockout.
She says there's no rematch clause from her side of the contract.
Making this a one and done situation. It won't be a two-fight engagement. I maintain my original position that this is a make-or-break fight for Michaela Mayer. If she loses this thing, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see the people over there at Top Rank drop her the way they dropped Elvis Rodriguez after his first loss. His first career loss to Kenny Sims.
You know, if Alicia Baumgardner were to lose, she could go back to Matchroom and have a rematch with Terry Harper.
I'd wager that if Alicia were to lose, she'd have more options moving forward as a Matchroom fighter than Michaela Mayer would. If Michaela Mayer loses that fight and she loses those 2 belts she's got, what the hell is Top Rank going to do for her? They don't have the run of the place at 135, 140, or 147.
She's the only female fighter they have under contract.
And you know, if they were to drop Michaela Mayer, should she lose this upcoming fight with Alicia Baumgardner, she could always migrate. She could always go to Matchroom. She could see about having a fight with Terry Harpier.
Yeah, if she were to lose and Top Rank were to drop her the same way they dropped Elvis Rodriguez.
Top Rank is a no-nonsense outfit that doesn't hesitate to put their fighters in sink or swim situations. You will justify your value, your cost.
What it costs to put on your fights, your shows, what it costs to promote you.
There's no such thing as a free lunch. You want the big fight, they'll get you the big fight, but you better win.
Top Rank don't fuck
Do
around.
you think she can knock out Alicia Baumgardner?
No, I don't. Michaela Mayer's best bet in this fight is winning a points decision because the knockout puncher in this fight.
One with all the punching powers, Alicia. If anybody's gonna win by knockout, it's her.
In men's bantamweight news, we know that tomorrow morning, here stateside, we're going to get to see Inoue and Donaire do the dance for the second time in what is yet another unification match.
Boys are all weighed in and they're ready to go.
There are going to be 3 alphabet titles on the line in this rematch as opposed to just 2 alphabet titles the way there were in their first fight. The winner of the fight will be one step closer to becoming this division's undisputed champion. For those of you that have been following the channel long enough, you will know that I am going with Naoya Inoue to finish the job. I am going with Naoya Inoue to stop Nonito Donaire in the rematch.
But we have to entertain all scenarios here.
Because Nonito Donaire packs the best left hook, the most quality left hook in the entirety of the men's bantamweight division. Because the both of these fighters are ranked on the current Ring IQ pound-for-pound list, I've actually held out on making some updates to it, waiting for this fight to come to pass.
A lot of people ask me, is this past weekend's fight? Well, the winner emerge on the list.
What about unified super bantamweight champion Stefan Fulton?
I've gotten a lot of questions about what's next for the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list.
And I have held out on making several updates, waiting for this fight between the number 3 ranked Ring IQ pound-for-pound fighter, Naoya Inoue, and the number 4 ranked Ring IQ pound-for-pound fighter, Nonito Donaire. If Naoya Inoue wins, he doesn't necessarily gain ground on Terrence Crawford.
No, he beat Naoya Inoue already.
It will make it harder for those ranked behind him to move ahead of him being in possession of 3 alphabet titles. But as far as him advancing to the number 2 spot, those eggs are going to need more bacon.
If Naoya Inoue wins, no, he won't advance ahead of Terrence Crawford.
We'll definitely fortify that number 3 spot and make it harder for guys that are ranked behind him to move ahead of him. But beating Nonito for a second time, that's not a strong enough argument for him to move past Terrence Crawford when he's beaten Nonito already.
If he wins, he keeps that number 3 spot, Nonito gets bumped off.
All those ranked behind him will move up 1 spot. Kazuto Ioka, who is currently ranked at number 5, he will move up to number 4.
He's supposed to be in action next month on the 13th.
In defense of his WBO Super Flyweight title against his old buddy, Donnie Nietes. He will attempt to avenge that loss, and Donnie will attempt to pry away the brown belt from the reigning champion. These guys have actually fought before.
4 years ago.
Yeah, about 4 years ago, Donnie Nietes won a split decision against Kazuto Ioka. It was close.
Close enough that I don't actually like Donnie's chances in a rematch. You know, Donnie, he's no spring chicken.
He's 7 years older than Kazuto Ioka.
I know that Kazuto has last two fights has been looking less than spectacular. He's not looking like the guy that completely outclassed, dominated, and stopped the then unbeaten Kosei Tanaka, 3-division champion Kosei Tanaka. He hasn't been looking like that guy, but you know what? Donnie Nietes, he hasn't been looking great either, and he's 7 years older than Kazuto Ioka. I vaguely recall Donnie's last fight.
He won a split decision over Norberto Jimenez.
Part of a Pro Bellum show on the undercard of Sonny Edwards versus Jason Mama.
I think Donnie Nietes got lucky. I think he's real lucky that he's made it this far.
But I do think his luck is going to run out next month when he faces Kazuto Ioka for the second time. Kazuto Ioka, who is currently ranked at number 5. If Nonito loses tomorrow, Kazuto Ioka will gain ground and move up to number 4. And all those ranked behind him, they'll move up as well, and a new face will emerge on the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list. Perhaps more than one.
That's why I've held out on updating the list.
Instead of making small updates, small adjustments week by week, why not just wait and make one big adjustment where we get the full picture after tomorrow's fight? And if Nonito Donaire loses, he's off the list. A vacant spot will emerge and someone will occupy it. The same is true in reverse if Nonito wins. If Nonito wins, Inoue's off the list. Nonito moves up to number 3.
Same deal. It's going to be a vacant spot. Somebody's got to occupy it.
Nonito Donaire still has one of the best left hooks, if not the best left hook in the entire bantamweight division. I mean, you saw what he did to then unbeaten WBC champion Nordine Ubali. You saw what he did to his unbeaten mandatory challenger right after that, Raymart Caballo. Nonito Donaire still has a lot of punching power.
Hey, you see what he did to Naoya Inoue's eye in their first fight?
Right eye. He fractured his orbital bone.
Been giving everybody the people's eyebrow ever since.
I happen to think tomorrow morning we're not going to witness a fairy tale. I think tomorrow morning what we're going to see is Naoya Inoue finishing the job. It's not going to go to the cards. I think tomorrow what we're going to see is Naoya Inoue take another belt away from Nonito Donaire, but it'll be by way of knockout this time.
The silver lining is if it happens the other way.
Both Nonito Donaire and Paul Butler just so happen to be pro bellum fighters who are promoted by Richard Schaefer.
If Nonito gets his hands on Naoya Inoue's 2 belts, he's just one fight away from becoming this division's undisputed champion.
All he'll have left to do to become this division's undisputed champion is face his pro bellum stablemate, Paul Butler, who I think most people would give Nonito Donaire good odds to beat if he actually makes his way past Naoya Inoue. I don't think he will. I don't think that's the way it's going to happen. I do have Naoya Inoue by way of knockout.
Very exciting times in the men's bantamweight division.
I'm looking forward to tomorrow morning's drama in Saitama. And finally, Eddie Hearn says Canelo versus Golovkin 3 is bigger now after Canelo's loss to Dimitri Bivol. A sentiment I've often expressed after that fight here on the channel. There's a lot more intrigue associated with Canelo versus Golovkin 3 now than had Canelo actually won that fight with Dimitri.
Eddie Hearn says it's still a huge fight.
He says, funnily enough, the Golovkin fight becomes bigger now because people give Golovkin a chance of winning the fight. Before it was all like, oh, he's 39, he's 40, he's not going to win the fight. Now people look at that performance and say, okay, maybe Golovkin's got more of a chance. So that's a massive fight, as is the Bivol rematch.
Now, there were actually some rumors that Crawford versus Spence was supposed to go down that same month.
That gave rise to widespread debates as to who needs to move off the date, when for me, it's crystal clear that not only is Canelo versus Golovkin a bigger commercial fight than Spence versus Crawford, but they actually made their announcement first, so they already beat Spence and Crawford to the punch.
They haven't officially announced that fight.
Rumors seem to indicate that it's Crawford and Spence that have decided to move off of September and do their fight in October, several weeks later. A wise decision. You don't want to go head-to-head with the face of boxing, the cash cow of boxing in this country. And rest assured, loss to Bivol or no loss, this guy's still the cash cow of boxing. Nobody commands a bigger audience here stateside than he does.
Than Canelo Alvarez.
Canelo, who says, this is very personal. He being Gennady Golovkin, he never stopped talking about me.
You know, some fighters fight a fight and they develop a mutual respect between each other.
Some fighters do, but not these two. I never got the sense that these guys had a mutual respect for each other, that they liked each other after their 2 fights.
You know, that they bonded the same way Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward bonded after their trilogy.
Not these two. Canelo Canelo Alvarez said, "It's always been very personal with him. That will never go away. After we finished 2 fights, it still feels the same way, very personal. Golovkin has never stopped talking about me. If you see, I never mention his name," Canelo told Erica Montoya of DAZN. "I've always been in his mouth. He's always talked about me, and that makes it even more personal. The fact that there is this rivalry puts an extra element there. It makes me train harder. I try harder. Personally, sometimes I feel better that it exists, the rivalry between them. And I've always felt that way, that these two guys, these ain't the two fighters that bond after having shared the ring. Not these two. Golovkin likely feels raw about the first fight. He feels that he was robbed. Canelo Alvarez, he's always seemed annoyed by Gennady Golovkin. The fact that he was being hounded for a little over a year to face that guy.
Ahead of their first fight.
You know, after Canelo Alvarez beat Miguel Cotto for the WBC title, and the year and a half that followed, however long it took to finally face Gennady Golovkin and everything that happened in between, that was the last time I remember Canelo Alvarez's stock taking a critical hit. This loss to Dimitri Bivol, believe it or not, it hasn't hurt his stock.
It hasn't hurt his marquee value. I predict it's amplified it.
That's what I've been saying. The Golovkin trilogy wasn't as intriguing before. Wasn't as intriguing before Canelo lost the Bivol fight, but now there's an added element of intrigue. Before it seemed like a cash grab.
Now you never know. Maybe Canelo's not in the right headspace.
Not entering the ring with the same confidence he did before the Bivol fight, the fight that he just lost, and maybe that will affect his performance. Maybe that gives Golovkin an out. In any event, the trilogy is now more intriguing than it was before, so losing to Bivol hasn't actually hurt Canelo's stock, at least not yet.
4 or 5 years ago, when he won that green belt and he didn't fight Gennady?
When he didn't fight him straight away. Oh, that definitely hurt Canelo Alvarez's stock. His pay-per-view numbers were steadily in decline.
It wasn't until the Chavez fight that the numbers picked up, but the night of the Chavez fight, he officially announced the Golovkin fight.
There's a reason that the Spence versus Crawford fight got moved from September to October. They don't want to go head-to-head with this thing, regardless of what the mouth breathers on Twitter might tell you.
And some content creators here on YouTube.
Been telling you the whole time, commercially, Canelo versus Golovkin 3 is, in fact, the bigger fight.